Welcome to episode number 18 of In and Around Pleasant Hill podcast with Alex Codedat. I'm really excited about today's podcast. I have a guest speaker, Dr. Bellin. He's a psychologist and a professor of psychology at JFK University. Is that correct?
Very, very close. I'm a professor of counseling, and you think, oh, it doesn't make a big difference, and it doesn't make a big difference in practice, but in licensure, I have to present myself correctly. Yeah. So I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor and professor of counseling at National University in the JFK School of Psychology. Yeah.
Beautiful. And what I love about today's title, it's that, you helped me title this, is the importance of small moments. And I love that, the importance of small moments. So again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. And I'm really looking forward to this interview. It's something that has actually impacted my life. So thank you again. So let's just dive right into it. Can you introduce yourself, your background, and what made you get into the profession that you're at? And then we'll talk about anxiety and depression.
Great, sure, yeah. So my name is Bellin. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. I moved out to the Bay Area in 2010 after completing a PhD in pastoral counseling, which is kind of like a fusion of spirituality and psychology. I finished my PhD at Loyola University, came to the Bay Area, and I was licensed before in Maryland and Washington, D.C., and then I got licensed in California in 2012. I'm the 37th licensed professional counselor in the state of California, which is kind of like a fun thing, a little fun fact. And I was thinking about, what inspired me to get into the profession. And I thought of like two main reasons. Like one, growing up, I was really kind of like rewarded, but also told that, something about me is that I'm sensitive and I'm a attentive listener. And those are two really good qualities to have when you're going to be stepping into psychotherapy. And the other thing is I'm just fascinated with stories. I love to hear stories, my own family story of, coming to the United States, and then, just the development of our family since then. And just the human story, like the human connective story that we all live. To me, it's just fascinating. And so that has inspired me to do this work. And I've been in private practice in California since 2012 and started to work teaching psychotherapy. I think it was since 2014. And I'm really happy to be here and share today with you.
Yeah, and when we had a conversation, I believe it was yesterday, we're talking about, how anxiety and how it had affected my life. In 2017, I felt like I was having a panic attack. And then later I went and I spoke to my doctor, and my doctor said that, it could be an anxiety attack. And that's how I was able to meet Alvin at the gym. He's I believe he's the dean at JFK. Right. And he had given me some, enlightened me on a few things of what I need to do. And since then, I've tried to do this whole importance of living in the small moments and trying to live in the moment. But it's for me, it's been a process. It's a challenge. I've gotten better at it. But I want you to like before COVID, after COVID, regarding anxiety, regarding depression, like how do we handle this? Like, because some people, they have this stigma of like, I'm not going to go see a doctor. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't need medication. Or they all think that just because they go see a counselor or psychologist that they have to take medication. But, I've come to a conclusion that you do need help. You do, and we're all struggling in this in some shape or form. And I just believe that it's good to manage it. But enlighten us, first, educate us. Before the pandemic, after the pandemic, did the pandemic have any effect on this anxiety and depression? And then hopefully, what are some of the tools that we can use to help us with anxiety and depression?
Sure, yeah. So first of all, when we're talking about anxiety and depression, it's always important to say that there are levels of anxiety and depression that could get so great that they can be life-threatening. And so in moments like that, it is, dire. It's very important to reach out for help, whether that's emergency room, a doctor, a therapist, a friend, a trusted person in your life. These are serious conditions. And so it's just important to state that and to be clear that we're talking about something that, as you said, does impact your life, doesn't impact all of our lives to different degrees. And sometimes, they become very overwhelming. In terms of, obviously depression, anxiety have been around since human beings have been around, and maybe even before. There's, sometimes people say, oh, my dog has depression, my bird is anxious. So, this may be beyond a human condition as well. I think what happened with the pandemic, this is kind of anecdotally from my own clinical work, from my own life experience, there was introduced into our life such an unknown of what's going on. It just sparked so much more trauma of moments in our lives that were out of control. And that sense of things being out of control, our lives become very insular. We become cut off. Things become more rigid. And what anxiety and depression does, it creates rigidity in the way that we respond, when we think about what's happening in our life. That kind of like internal rigidity, and it's very physical, kind of amps up that sense of depression and anxiety. So people report feeling, more tired, less motivated, kind of going back to habit patterns that weren't really healthy for them. It's a way of dealing with the increased anxiety and depression. And, we kind of are living in, some people consider, oh, COVID is over. Some people, oh, no, it's still going on. So even now, like, we're not even living in one reality. And just so this sustained sense of like what is happening, and that could spark, increased anxiety and depression. Yeah.
Yes, but do you see more, increase? Because I've read articles or I've seen stats where it says after COVID it's gone up by 300%. Are those numbers accurate?
Yeah, that I can't speak to. Like, I haven't looked at, any official research. I can't speak to. I know from, again, my own client work, people who were coming in with depression, anxiety before, people were coming in with depression, anxiety after. Perhaps more people are coming to therapy because of the elevated, sense of anxiety, depression, but I think also more because of that social isolation. We kind of were all invited and even mandated for the social distancing, which was important to help with the virus itself, but that social distancing then also brought with it social isolation, and that's kind of like adding depression, anxiety with social isolation. That creates a lot of higher risk.
Dr. Bellin, how do you know if you have either an anxiety or depression? Like, what's the difference? Like, how do you know what's what?
Yeah, good question. I kind of look at them as almost like two sides of the same coin. Generally, when we're dysregulated, which means when things are not going well, where we're feeling lost control, disconnected, scared, angry, our sense of kind of okayness becomes dysregulated. And we kind of tend towards two sides, and they're somewhat connected. One is we become hyper vigilant, more defensive, vigilant, afraid, on guard, looking out. And that's kind of more of the anxiety, where there's this kind of like intensity that builds when there's dysregulation, trying to control everything, or just a lot of worry, like being very worried. So kind of noticing, like increased worry, increased vigilance, increased trying to control. And it's something that you could really feel, like people may feel it more in like the chest or the buzz, like clamped up jaw or the hands. That could be like a sign that there's anxiety. depression is more of a hypoactivity. So things kind of get lower, less motivated, kind of sleepy, tired. I don't want to do anything. I'm not enjoying anything anymore. I don't want to eat anymore, or I'm eating too much because and the feeling there, I think, is more like in the kind of pit of the stomach, lethargy, just feeling really tired. But the dysregulation is the same, so like the fear, the unknown, the cause could be kind of the same. I think it seems that some people just tend towards, more anxiety. Some people tend towards more depression. But the problem is the dysregulation, and
Right.
that's a physical thing that we want to address.
Right. Now, Dr. Bellin, I mean, like when we're born, we don't come to this world with depression and anxiety, correct? I mean, it's something that over time
Uh-huh.
we start building. Is that correct?
Well, some people may say that we do come with anxiety, because our anxiety, kind of makes us cry. And then that's the only tool we really have as babies, to let our caretakers know that something's wrong. So I don't, it's an interesting question, but so there could be some kind of anxiety that's always with us. And one of the things that we're going to talk about in terms of tools is that never goes away. The things that kind of make us anxious in our dysregulation never go away. And that part of us that's like a little baby that needs to be taken care of, we really need to know that that's kind of consistent through life. Depression, that might be more learned, like a sense of hopelessness, but that's also a very early thing, because parents can't meet the needs of their babies all the time. It's actually maybe a very natural thing that we have to just respect and honor through life. We have to learn, like, okay, it's not going to work out the way that I want. My needs are not going to be met all the time. That's a very early learning. And what we hope we learn with that is resilience. And I think that's what we're trying to kind of build up, is that resilience, that, hey, it's okay, things are not working out, not getting exactly what I need. Things seem hopeless sometimes. So what do I do about that? And that's kind of what these kind of the importance of the small moments. That's where we have to come back to when things just kind of seem overwhelming and hopeless.
Right. Now, wow, that's a really good one when when your needs are not met. And yeah, that could be a thing for depression. I see a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of go-getters. I see anxiety built in them. What do you think is one of the reasons why a lot of go-getters and entrepreneurs, they have anxiety?
Yeah, well, I think our culture rewards anxiety, and I'll speak for I know we're living in the same area, but, this kind of like capitalist mindset, which sparks a lot of creativity and go get 'em attitude. And there's a lot of positivity around there, but it really drives this kind of like go, go, go attitude. Like, we're rewarded when we don't sleep, when we're on our email all the time, when we're responding right away, when we have, we're connected and plugged in, then we're kind of like being trained to stay at that level of intensity that, that's characteristic of anxiety, where, we've got to stay caffeinated and tight and tense and ready to go. And so I think we're almost like paid to be anxious. And, that's something important to look at, kind of this almost like countercultural experience of like taking a vacation, or taking a break, or taking a moment in your day to like take a breath, or for folks who have faith, like to take a break to pray in the middle of their workday. Like that's a very countercultural thing, but it's something that could be so helpful. And so I think we are really trained to be anxious in a way. We're
Right.
rewarded. Yeah.
Now, do you think COVID, folks that actually got COVID, do you think that's had an impact that they could have they, let's say before they weren't depressed, they didn't have any anxiety, and all of a sudden now they have depression? Because I know people that were normal, and after COVID, they got COVID, and now they're like, hey man, I've been depressed for the last year and I'm finally getting out of it. Is there
Mhm.
any direct correlation between these two?
Yeah, to me, that's more of a medical question, so I'm not sure. I think, we can't deny the real physical impacts of COVID and how that impacted different people in different ways. And so I know people like now who are getting sick with COVID where it's not a week or 10 days anymore. Like now they're sick for like 2 months.
Yeah.
So not getting knocked off your game, off your routine, off your healthy eating for that long, I think can have prolonged impact. But, I can't say if there's any like medical or scientific correlation.
Right. What about tools? Like, you were talking about a few minutes ago about drinking, like what can we do? Like some folks, they think that if they go see a counselor, a psychologist, they think that it's just going to go away. Like they'll go take a pill, they'll get cured and they're back to normal, but I mean, that's, I don't think that's like, what do you do? I mean, like, do you have to manage it? Like, what's the...
Yeah, great question. Yes, I actually prepared, thought really deep about this. I love giving like threes, like just examples in threes. So I prepared 3 kind of tips, like groups of tips. And the preface to that is reach out for help. It's really is important to break that isolation. It's important to break that stigma. And if we could learn anything from kind of the younger, generation, that's, like folks in their teens and their 20s right now, they're talking about their mental health issues so openly. And it's really amazing and really wonderful. So, preface everything with reach out for help if you need it. So the first kind of tip is to kind of do a self-care check, right? And that goes back to, remembering, like if you've ever taken care of a baby, sometimes the baby's crying and you're not sure why. And you say, oh, maybe it's needs to be changed or hungry, or it's uncomfortable, it needs to be picked up, wants to be sung to. And we have to like try out different things, So that really, what I've learned from paying attention to myself in meditation is that doesn't change. Like if the body is uncomfortable for whatever reason, there's just going to be anxiety, there's going to be discomfort, there can be depression. And so do a self-care check. What does that mean? Basic things. Do I need to drink water? Did I get fresh air today? Have I gotten some movement? Did I eat well today? Did I establish any kind of connection, whether that's with another person or an animal, just some kind of connection that's so important? And then how is my breathing? Am I taking deep breaths? Am I taking shallow breaths? Focusing in on these just small things. That comes back to that theme of the importance of small moments. Just a glass of water could really change a moment, like taking time to like give myself, it's such a kindness, like have I eaten something healthy, during the day and prepared myself a nice meal, things like that could really make a big difference. So the first kind of tip that I'm suggesting, very basic, is basic self-care. So perform a self-care check. Okay. The second one is, I use this a lot for mindfulness teaching. The acronym is PIA, P-I-A. So P stands for posture. So the first thing is checking in with your body. And you notice a lot in depression or anxiety, you'll notice your body has a certain posture. For anxiety, it could be very tense, and for depression, maybe, yeah, you got it, you know what? And especially in the jaw is something you have to watch out for. Depression, you might just feel very lethargic and just laying down. So first is, checking with your body and change the body position, lengthen it, relax it, take a deep breath, shake it out, jump up and down, do something with the body to kind of change the posture. So that's the P of the PIA. The second is, what is the intention? That's the I, the intention for the moment, right? So instead of focusing in on everything that's going wrong with the world, everything that I have to do, everything I'm afraid of, what's right in front of me that I need to accomplish? Like, what is the task at hand? That could be getting out of bed. My intention is to get out of bed. My intention is to go to the grocery store and buy grapes. And that maybe gives me a lot of anxiety to do that, or call someone that I need to call my boss. So I'm coming back to like, what is the task at hand? That's my intention that I want to kind of focus in on. And then the A, P-I-A, Pia, the A is what is my anchor? What could kind of land me in this present moment? And that's usually feet on the floor, taking a deep breath, or another really nice anchor is noticing beauty, right? Just kind of noticing your environment. What are you drawn to? A plant, a blue sky, a flower, someone's smile, a photo of someone who cares about you, right? So being able to anchor yourself in the present moment can be helpful to kind of transform, to manage, like that word you used before, the anxiety and the depression when you're noticing it right in the moment. So that's the second tip is Pia, the posture, intention, anchor. And we have time for one more?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the last one is an overall reminder of compassion, right? Compassion is a sense of caring for myself, caring for other people. A way to access compassion is, putting your hand on your heart, your shoulder, your neck, and just say, I care. I care about what I'm experiencing. I care that I'm suffering. I care that this is a hard moment, but I care. Another one, again, this is maybe for folks who are more faithful or have some spiritual practice, is to pray, to kind of like turn towards the universe, turn towards God, and ask for help. That's a way to bring in compassion. Another way to bring in compassion is imagine that you're with someone or some being that really loves you. It could be a pet, it could be your grandmother, it could be you're a child, it could be your partner, it could be even just some basketball player that you just feel that's a really amazing person. It'd be so cool to be in that person's presence. Just imagine kind of sitting in your pain, in the anxiety, in the depression, but you're not alone. You're in the presence of someone who really cares about you. That's another way. And then one final way of bringing compassion is actually to care for someone else. Instead of kind of bringing the focus so much on what's going on with me, how do I change what's going on with me, say, how could I help someone else right now? So let me send a text to a friend, say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Let me write a card, for someone's birthday that's coming up. And to know, that, because it's this reciprocal feeling, because when I care for someone else, what I'm actually doing is sparking that feeling and fire of care in my own body. And again, so that's what we're trying to do, is to kind of free up the body from the anxiety. So that fire of compassion could be really helpful. So again, the three kind of tips is a self-care check, Pia, posture, intention, anchor, and to spark compassion.
Now, Dr. Bellin, what are some of, because I know Alvin had given me some, but I'd like to hear from you. When it comes to, let's talk about anxiety first. What are some of the don'ts that you should not be doing if you have depression? Either consumption of food, or because you had said, or obviously some people, they turn into drugs and what have you. What are some of the things you should not be doing when it comes to anxiety?
Yeah, that's a good. So for anxiety, and maybe Dr. Alvin McLean and I, maybe we have different things. I think it's I guess one of the things that's hard to do, but it's important not to do, is to ask the question, why me? That question, why me? We'll never understand it. There's no answer to it, and it just creates that spiral in the mind that there's a bigger problem than there actually is. So I would kind of say, like, avoiding that kind of thought pattern. In terms of practical things, let's see, what do I should kind of limit the unhealthy behaviors. That's different for everyone. Like, I know for me, like the phone scrolling, like when I'm anxious, like eventually, like it doesn't serve as a healthy distraction. It becomes a prison almost of distraction, to the point where now my hands start to hurt because I'm scrolling too, so I would say just kind of notice, like, what are your go-to distractions, your go-to behaviors when you're anxious, and ask, is this really like sustainable? Is it healthy for me? And being honest with yourself. You don't have to tell anyone else, but identifying for yourself, you may want to kind of limit those. But it's nice not to create such strict rules, because strict rules, again, is just creates that rigidity, and that's what the anxiety we're trying to avoid. Yeah,
That's right.
And for depression, I read once a long time ago, and I use this for myself sometimes, is when I'm kind of notice that I'm feeling depressed, I may decide like, you know what, tonight I'm going to throw myself a depression party. And kind of like go for it, Again, this is not to like the level of suicidality. This is just like our regular when we feel down and like just need a break from life. And it's like, great, buy your ice cream, put on your Netflix. And so you do it for one night. It's like, right? It's okay.
I love it. I love it.
But if it starts to then bleed into the next day,
Yep.
and then it's like, okay, I need help.
Yep.
So it's like noticing that boundary and so that being honest.
That's right.
So yeah.
In my 20s, I used to listen a lot to Tony Robbins. You probably heard of him, right?
Yeah.
And I remember he talked about back then, I didn't understand anxiety. I didn't understand depression because, I just didn't. So, and I remember what he said. He would say, now it makes sense. He would say, if you feel anxious or if you're, feel like you're out of control, he goes, one thing you should do is when you wake up in the morning, clean your house. Like when you start cleaning, you feel like you're in control now, right? So that sticked with me. So what I do to help me with my anxiety when I feel like I'm getting anxious, when I wake up in the morning, I've tried the hardest to get up in the morning and meditate for 10, 15, 20 minutes. But the problem is after 3, 4, 5 minutes, my mind is going like, oh my God, I need to call this client. I need to do this. I need to do that. And I try to acknowledge it and move on, but it just keeps going. It doesn't stop, right? So then one thing I've done is I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to start my day. Instead of just diving right into meditating for 5, 10 minutes, what I'm going to do is when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I clean the kitchen. Like I wash all the dishes, I clean the kitchen, and I make my wife coffee. But she's asleep. She's not an early bird like me. I'm up every day at 5:30 in the morning. And when I make her coffee, that's my gratitude. Compassion that you talk about, that's my compassion for her. I tell myself, like I'm talking to myself and I say, Tina, I love you. And I make her coffee. But like I clean all of that. So when she wakes up in the morning, she's a happy wife because the kitchen is beautiful, spotless, and all the dishes are washed. But to me, I've actually helped myself too, because I feel that I'm in control, that I'm, and that's a thing that I never understood before. Now I understand that when I like how you started out by saying, anxiety is when people feel like they're out of control. And this is just somehow, I don't know, clean your house or whatever, do something that you're in control, but something that's not bad. Something not a bad habit where some people turn into drugs or they do this and that. Hopefully it's a good habit. That's just something that I do.
That's amazing. I love that example. And it's nice to know that in the kind of like historic traditions of mindfulness and meditation, cleaning is meditation. Doing something beautiful for another person is meditation. You don't have to even think of it as like a separate thing. You don't have to think of it like, oh, now I was in meditation. Now that I'm sitting, I'm doing my meditation. You can think of that whole process as meditative practice.
That's
because
right.
You're coming with your intention, you're creating order, and again, I think, and I like what you said about doing like things that are healthy and good. It's ultimately, what is kind to yourself and your body, and what's going to leave yourself and the world around you a better place.
That's right.
So if you have those as guiding principles, then
that's right. And two things that I've noticed for anxiety is not good that I've cut back. I never liked it anyways. One is caffeine. Like when I used to work out in the morning, I would always have pre-workout and it has like 500,000 whatever caffeine in it. I've stopped that. And another thing I've stopped is anxiety. Is multitasking. Like I focus it on one thing, getting that done, and then doing something else. And then, I have a good friend of mine, and he came into our office one day. He's like, I do biohacking. Like just start saying goofy things. Like, how you said, jump up and start jumping up and down. Like throughout the day, I just say just goofy things. And my wife's like, why are you saying that? I'm like, I'm just biohacking my own brain. Like I make myself laugh
Yeah.
just to kind of like take that
Yeah.
distraction away.
That's great. Yeah. Anxiety and depression, they limit the possibilities that are accessible to us for our responding to the world. And
Yep.
so by kind of shaking ourselves up, getting ourselves out of the routine, and that's also between couples and families as well, by being a little weird, being odd, kind of throwing a curveball, it kind of wakes up and shakes up the mind. It's like, oh yeah, there's so much out there. We get so stuck in what's possible, but it's really infinite when we start to really think about. So I love that idea of biohacking like that.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Bellin, is there, like you told us about the tools and the acronyms, is there books that you recommend or maybe videos when it comes to like meditation that people can maybe, or maybe if there's apps that they can get to help them with anxiety or maybe even depression?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so definitely what I use is an app called Insight Timer, but there's other apps. I think there's another one called Calm as well.
Yes, I've heard of Calm. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's Insight Timer. I haven't experienced Calm, but Insight Timer is a free app, and there's tons of different meditations and a timer. And what's really nice about that app is the opening screen, it has a map, and it shows you like how many hundreds of thousands of people are logged onto the app at the same time.
Wow.
So like you're not alone practicing. And
Wow.
but then there's meditation for anxiety, for depression, you can look up different themes.
And it's called the Insight Timer.
Insight Timer, yeah.
Insight Timer, and you can get the app downloaded, and there's no cost for that.
Yeah, there's no cost. Yeah, and that's a great app. And then I think just as through the app, you'll kind of come across all the different authors. There's tons of different books, and there's also so many different types of meditation. And I would say it's also a good idea to look into your own culture and your own historical roots for these kinds of tools.
Yeah.
Every faith tradition, every culture has these beautiful tools that are right there that are part of our lives already. So it is, of course, great to experience, for me, like learn about Tibetan meditation and Zen meditation, but thinking about my own Jewish roots, gathering together, like the importance of coming together over food and having a Sabbath, and, transition when I enter into a different room, and the ability to pray, and whether I believe in God in a certain way or in a different way, that doesn't matter. But there's so many beautiful tools in our own historic tradition. So that's a really great place to start looking.
Awesome. Now, Dr. Bellin, if I know you have a private practice, correct?
Yeah.
And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, are you taking new patients?
I have a few spots open, and things change all the time with private practice. So I could give you.
Yeah, if you could please give us your contact information just so they can reach out to either phone number or email or how they can go hold.
Yeah, the best way to get information is you could either Google my name, which you probably see on the screen there, Zvi Bellin, on Psychology Today. So you could find my practice information. Then I have a website that's pretty simple, but it's Meaning Through Being. Meaning Through Being. If you Google that term, you'll probably get me. Hopefully, I think the only one using that, Meaning Through Being, and that will also give you information about my practice.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time.
You.
I appreciate you. I know you have a very, very busy day. I've learned a lot, and I'm glad because I know so many people around me that need help. Either they've got mild depression or they got anxiety. So they're definitely going to enjoy this podcast and the video also too. So thank you again.
Thank you.
I appreciate you. And again, to all of our viewers, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast and this interview. And do me a favor, please make sure you guys subscribe, share this video, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Until the next podcast, I hope you guys all have a great day. Take care, Dr. Bellin.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.